Good afternoon and welcome to this, our first session on planning your project for the Santander Changemaker Fund. So hopefully we are joined by a whole horde of future changemakers who are interested in learning a bit about crowdfunding, about the first steps, what you need to do, and some of the funds available. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So first of all, a little bit of an introduction. My name's Sammy Morger. I'm Head of Coaching and Project Innovation here at Crowdfunder. I'm actually broadcasting live from Crowdfunder HQ in Cornwall today. And we're also joined by Anna, who's our fund matchmaker, who you can see down there in the corner. So Crowdfunder are the UK's #1 rewards-based platform. We have around about 150 to 200 projects every day who come onto Crowdfunder and start to make their idea happen. So that gives you a little bit of an idea as to how popular crowdfunding is becoming and how big it's actually becoming as part of day-to-day life. So how crowdfunding works, and I want to just make sure that we're all really clear on this first of all. So we're talking about rewards crowdfunding. There's 3 quite simple steps if we think about it in this way. First up, get on the internet and you create your unique project page on Crowdfunder, which explains your idea, explains what you want to do. You set a target, and that's in money, and how long you need to reach it. And that can be anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks. So this is all about short, sharp fundraising. Next, once your project goes live, you spread the word to friends, family, everyone that you know, basically, everyone in your community, and you tell them about what it is that you're doing. People who like what you're doing, they can either just donate some money or they can actually pledge and get something in return, what we call a reward, and they'll get that once their project succeeds. And now what we mean by a reward, we're going to go into a little bit more detail a bit later on. But it can be anything from a thank you to an invitation to an event, a ticket to come along and do something, or even a product, something physical. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what makes a good reward in the next session in a bit more detail. So it's always useful to explain crowdfunding with an example. So I'm going to introduce you here to Lynn and Rebecca, who you can see there with a little goat in the back of their van. So these guys love goats. They wanted to put in an urban goat farm into Bristol. They thought this was the best idea. This is what they wanted to do. So they used Crowdfunder to raise that initial money that they needed to get everything set up, and actually also to hopefully recruit some more people who might want to volunteer and get involved with Street Goat. So within 4 weeks, they raised nearly £10,000 from 167 supporters. And the kind of things that they were offering in return, you can see there, their screen printing, was a tote bag that they were making. They also offered things like opportunities to come onto the farm and try and learn something, or to come to different events, as well as things like goat's cheese, which is, you know, a really obvious one for a goat farm. So all sorts of different things. And you can see there at the end of it, they had lots of people coming along, getting involved, which is exactly what they were looking for. And of course, crowdfunding isn't just about goats. There's a huge range of projects on Crowdfunder that come in and use Crowdfunder to raise some money and gather some support for what they're doing. So we see everything from businesses to politicians, even filmmakers, schools, charities. It's really, really broad, and I think that's what makes Crowdfunder so great is the broad range of projects that we have. So I mentioned just a moment ago that actually for the guys at Street Goat, it was more than just the money that they were after when they came to Crowdfunder. And I think that's really important to note, is that compared to some other forms of funding, like for example, grant funding or getting loans from the bank or that kind of thing, it's actually very public. It's very much in an open forum. And that of course comes with some really great benefits. So first of all, you get that validation, and that comes directly from the community that you're trying to make a difference to usually. So with Lynn and Rebecca, what they found out through crowdfunding was that there's actually 167 people who also think that an urban goat farm in Bristol is a good idea, which I'm sure was great for them to know, that they're not sort of bonkers and that actually someone else thinks this is a good thing. So you get that validation not only of your idea, but actually if you are looking for funding in the future, for example, grant funding or via a bank, having a successful crowdfunding in your back pocket is actually a really great piece of evidence that you have a market, that you have people who are already interested in behind what you're doing. Awareness is the next one, and I think anyone who has gone through crowdfunding will tell you that you'll be shouting the loudest and proudest that you ever have done before when you're running your crowdfunding project. You can't help it. It's part of what crowdfunding is. It's that second step, is telling everyone that you know about it. So because it's something a little bit outside of the ordinary, it's a little bit outside of the day-to-day, and it's for a short amount of time and very focused, it gives people a reason to really listen to what it is that you're saying and for you to sort of pique their attention. The other thing that we find is that people who support crowdfunding projects tend to be on for the long haul. So those people who back your idea or offer some money or help you along the way in these early stages, they tend to be the people that will actually keep coming back. They keep volunteering, they keep coming to events, they keep buying your products. They're the people that, because they've helped to make this happen, it feels very close to their heart. It's something that's very important to them, and they're pretty invested in making sure that actually what you're doing does continue in the long term. Finally, something which is pretty unique to Crowdfunder is the extra funding that you can actually access via the platform just by running a project on Crowdfunder. And Anna's actually going to come on and tell us a little bit more about that in some detail in just a moment. So at this stage, people often go, this sounds amazing, this sounds like the best thing ever, what's the catch? There's not really a catch. There's no upfront fee, there's nothing that you're going to lose out on. There's a 5% fee plus VAT on anything that you raise, which is our platform fee for using the platform. So 5% plus VAT. There's also some charges by the payment provider, which we use Stripe, which if you've ever bought anything online, you've probably used Stripe, you just don't know that you have. So together it makes up around about 7 to 8% of whatever it is that you've raised, that you'll pay in fees. But for all the details on the fees and charges, if you go onto the Crowdfunder website, scroll right down to the bottom, you'll see just there in the footer, it says fees. You can click on that and find out everything that there is to know there. So I'm now going to hand over to Anna to tell us a little bit more about the extra funding on Crowdfunder. Take it away.
Yes, hello, I'm Anna and I help match projects with some of the extra funding that we have available. So Crowdfunder has teamed up with some really awesome organizations and local authorities, and these partners have money available to give away to projects, basically. So partners can pledge on projects that they approve, just like any other backer would, and it helps contribute towards their target. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the Changemaker Fund, but if you want to have a look at all of the funds we have available, you can just go to the link above, just on that page there. So this is the campaign page for Santander Changemaker, and they're offering £10,000 for eligible projects. But you may be wondering, what is an eligible project for this fund? Well, if your idea can help disadvantaged groups by increasing their well-being, if you can help with education or increase employability, help build skills or knowledge, then you should really take a look at this fund, because your project could be eligible. Another really important thing to know is that this fund is nationwide, so anywhere in the UK, if your project does any of those things, you should take a look at it. Another thing to note actually is that projects need to be run by either a charity, a community group, social enterprise, a company that is clearly driven by a social mission, or a company limited by guarantee. So once you sign up to Crowdfunder and you start creating a page, you'll be taken to this how to apply page, this project page. And you'll get a notification which basically tells you we have funds available, come have a look at them. So once you click on that Tell Me More button, you'll be taken to this page. And it's a really simple application form. We try to make it as easy as possible. you're able to look at the full eligibility criteria, which I obviously encourage everyone to take a look at, and just make sure you cover all the points that they need you to cover when you write your application form. And if you are approved, then you have to raise the first 50% of your target, and then they could potentially pledge the remaining 50%. So this is just so that they can see you have community support and support from the crowd, basically. But it could essentially cut your work in half in terms of fundraising. So it's a great fund. And I'll give it back to the Crowdfunder guys, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, Anna. That's really fab. So for the rest of the session today, we are going to be focusing specifically on planning your project. So that's everything that gives you a really strong foundation as you go forward. So we break it down into 3 steps. Those of you who have signed up via Eventbrite, you'll recognise that these are the 3 webinars that we're going to be running over the next few weeks. So today, all about planning. So we're talking about building your team, identifying your crowd, and nurturing that crowd ready for launch. Next time, we're going to be talking about creating the perfect project page. So specifically, that's things like how to tell your story, how to make sure your page looks good and it's engaging, putting together a video, what kind of rewards work really well, and things like how to set a target as well. So all of those things in the next session. Then in the final session, we're looking at running your project. And what we mean by that is all of the promotional elements. So what kind of strategy to use to launch? How do you market your project? How do you talk about it? How do you communicate it out to make sure that people are hearing what you're saying and they're engaging with it? So I will mention at this stage that we have 3 PDF packs that you can download, which accompany each of these sessions, and actually they're really great if you want to race ahead and make a start on your own. You can absolutely do that with these packs. Now you can find them on the Changemaker campaign page, and you can also find them in the Eventbrite link that, again, some of you may have signed up to today. So you download those. You can either actually fill them out straight on your computers, they're editable documents, or you can print it off and scribble and scrawl all over it as much as you like. But it really is the most useful tool that you'll find for working your way through your crowdfunding project. So we're going to get started by talking about your team. Now, what we mean by a crowdfunding team isn't necessarily something really formal. You don't need to get a football kit printed off with your names across the back, nothing like that. Your crowdfunder team is basically the people who are going to help you to make this thing happen. So it doesn't need to be anything formal. Now, we've identified a few key roles that we think is really worthwhile having when you're crowdfunding. It's pretty lonely if you do it on your own. I definitely advise getting some other people involved, even if it's just to bounce around ideas with them or get them to have a read of your project page. But usually sort of 3 to 5 people is a good number to have involved. As the person who's come along to this webinar today, you are probably the project leader. You're probably the person running the show. It might be that actually you fill some of the other roles as well. So have a think about what your strengths are and actually perhaps where you could do with a little bit of help. So if you've never made a video before or you know nothing about Facebook, it might be worth thinking about who you do know who is going to be able to help you with some of those things. Once you've got your team nailed down, we can now start to really think about your idea and what it is that you're trying to do. So I've got some examples here. These are 4 projects who have run recently, and they've all been funded by the Santander Changemaker Fund. So these are all change makers. And what we're looking at here is how you distill your idea down into something that's really short, really succinct, and really easy for people to understand. And this is a really important first step because it's something that you'll find yourself doing again and again. Not only when you're creating your page, but in your promotion, when you're writing about it, when you're tweeting, when you're putting stuff on Facebook, and actually when you're just talking to people face to face, is really distilling down what is it we're doing here. Now, some of these examples will sort of go from left to right. Foodworks 2 is a project based actually down here in Cornwall. And they're actually teaching food skills to adults to help them to make better choices about food, so to make healthy choices and also to save them some money as well. And that's just distilled down into those three things. That's really what we're talking about here. Now, growing better, you can see the three things that I've put there already, and I'm sure just from that title, from the picture, and from those three things, you already know what it's about. Urban farming, it's about these tiny little microgreens, and actually they train people as well, which is really, really cool. The next one along is actually a company called Madlug, and they actually provide these little travel bags for kids who are in care when they're moving from place to place. This was a guy who'd worked in care for many years, and he'd seen children carrying their things in a bin bag, everything that they own. So this was really the motivation behind this project. And I think that kind of exactly nails down what it is that he was all about. Finally, just this picture on its own is fantastic. Expand cycling without age across Scotland. It's all about taking elderly people on cycle rides, and of course, it's all about doing that in Scotland. So you can get a sense of that from their picture, and also from distilling it down into that. Now, let's look at that last example in a little bit more detail. So these guys raised just over £40,000, and they closed very recently. I think it was actually just a couple of weeks ago. And they were actually funded by Santander Changemaker, as I said just a moment ago. I definitely advise going on their page and just getting a sense of what they're all about. That's definitely going to help with some of the bits that we're going to talk about as we go forwards. So they figured out what it is that they're all about. So they know they're about taking these elderly people on cycle rides, getting them out, getting them to enjoy themselves out into the fresh air when perhaps they wouldn't be mobile and able to do that by themselves. So when they're thinking about their audience, their crowd, this is a really helpful way to think about who these people might be. So we've divided down their audience into what might be that connection to their project. So it might be that actually they're in Scotland, and actually that's the real key thing, is that they care about Scotland, they're from Scotland, and they'd love to see this happen across Scotland. It might be that they're actually already a supporter of Cycling Without Age. Maybe they know someone who's accessed it, or they know someone who volunteers, and that they think that's really cool. That could be the key thing there. It might be that actually they've never heard of Cycling Without Age, but they're cyclists themselves. They're enthusiasts. They really enjoy cycling, and they could see how it'd be really worthwhile and really of benefit for other people to get out there and enjoy it as well. Or it might be that actually they have a close connection with their grandparents, or perhaps they have lost grandparents, and they really see that value of making sure that elderly people aren't alone and they're not feeling lonely, and that they enjoy their days and they get the opportunity to do things like this. And those elements all together, it might be that actually for some people one is particularly strong, it might be that for other people the other element is particularly strong. But that's all kind of what makes up the picture of their crowd. Now, with that in mind, they can start drawing what we call a network map. So there's a template of a network map in the guide that I mentioned earlier. So if you're thinking, okay, what does this look like? How do I do it? There's a really clear example there that you can work from. So this is what the template looks like. It's something that you can use to start to think about who might want to support my project. It's really quite intimidating when you ask yourself that question, because so many answers rush into your mind. So often people start with friends and family, and that's a really good place to start. Then they start to think about people that they're pretty connected to, and people that already engage with their project, that support them, maybe local people, and you start to think through all those different groups with those connections that we were looking at just a moment ago. And it's never really finished, a network map. You can keep adding things to it. So do have a go at getting this down on paper and start to work through who might be in your crowd. Once you've got your network map done, it's quite useful to start to think about where these people might fall on this diagram. Basically, there's two main schools of people that support crowdfunding projects. They're either supporting it because they really like what you're doing. They think it's worthwhile, it's going to do some good in the world, it's just something that they want to put their money into. On the other side of things, it might be that actually they really want the reward. So this is particularly important for business projects, I'm sure you can imagine. That actually the thing that you're offering, whether it's the ticket to the festival or that new product, that's really what they want. And of course, that bit where the two meet in the middle, that's what we call the sweet spot. That's where crowdfunding is really strong, is if you've got a fantastic idea, but you're offering something really worthwhile in return as well. So by thinking about where people on your network map, those different groups, where they fall, it will start to give you a better idea of what kind of thing do you need to include in your description, what kind of rewards might you want to think about, how important are those rewards going to be? And that's really going to set you up ready for that second stage where we talk about creating your project, okay? So now we know who your crowd is, we know why they're motivated, we know why they're going to be wanting to support your project. Before you go live, don't wait until you go live, do start nurturing those people. So here we're talking about those personal contacts, people that you know, existing supporters, local people. We want those people to feel nurtured. We want them to feel important and valued and like they've heard about this first and that they are kind of ahead of the game and knowing exactly what's going on with you and your organisation or your project. And of course, in the run-up to launching your crowdfund, do make sure that they all know when you're going live. Save that date. Make sure that they all know when that launch date is and what's happening. It's much better to have those conversations before you launch rather than having to do it once you're already live. It's obviously much quicker if they already know about it. And of course, you can grow your crowd. As I said, the network map's never really finished. One of the great tools that you can use is actually available on Facebook. And you may know about this search tool, but you might not have used it in this way before. So you can actually search for groups or pages or even events that might be relevant to your project. So as an example, we're looking at Cycling Without Age. I've just put cycling into that window just to see what comes up. And straight away, I see a group for cyclists in London, in Newquay, where I am. I can see different magazines. I can see some events down there as well, which might be really relevant, where I can find people who are really going to be interested in what I'm doing. So it's quite a nifty little tool. You can start to join those communities and not only think about recruiting them as potential backers and supporters, but actually getting their feedback on what you're doing, on refining that idea. How should you be presenting this story and what kind of rewards might you want to offer? So those kinds of people can offer some really great feedback and advice going forwards. So that's pretty much everything that we wanted to cover today. There's a few things, of course, that we haven't touched on so much, but you can find everything in that pack. As I said, this is just to give you a flavour as what's planning your project and that kind of thing is all about. So before our next session, there's a few key things I want you to make sure you do. So do download those guides. I know I've been harking on about it because they're absolutely awesome. I promise you it's one of the most useful tools that we have. Do have a go at refining your idea and getting it down to just a couple of sentences so you can be really clear about what it is that you're all about, what you're trying to do. And do make a start on your network map. As I said, it will keep evolving, it will keep growing, but the sooner you make a start on it, then when those little ideas come to you in the middle of the night, you can just jot them down on there. Any questions at all, please do get in touch with us here at Crowdfunder. You can pop us an email over at support@crowdfunder.co.uk, or you can always find us on Twitter if you've got any quick questions. And our next session is going to be in a couple of weeks' time, where we're going to be focusing on creating your project. And that's all about making the perfect project page. That's going to be 5 p.m. on Thursday, the 28th of September. So do make sure you come along for that. And if you miss it, you can just watch it back on the same link as long as you've signed up. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you found some of this useful, and do let us know, get in touch via email or Twitter with any feedback that you have on these sessions. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, bye.